The UK economy shrinks for the first time in more than 6 years, raising fears of a recession.
Another recession? We're already halfway there according to the latest official data. The UK economy contracted by 0.2% in the second quarter of 2019, the first quarterly drop in activity since 2012. Another 3 months of contraction, and that meets the technical definition of recession. So how big is that threat? The latest quarter's output has been artificially depressed by firms stockpiling before the original 29th of March Brexit deadline. But many analysts see a weakening trend amid the volatility, with business investment on the floor because of Brexit uncertainty and slumping global growth too due to Donald Trump's trade wars. If the economy does take a downward lurch, how might Boris Johnson respond? What rockets could this prime ministerial advocate of economic boosterism fire off? And how does this play into his do-or-die Brexit policy? First, what do we know about Boris Johnson's economic approach? He's been relaxed about rising public borrowing. In the recent leadership campaign, he made unfunded tax cuts and spending promises that added up to a figure north of £30 billion. There's talk of an emergency booster budget in early October, alongside a one-year spending review for Whitehall departments. Allies of the Prime Minister are explicit that he wants to fire up the economy by ending the decade of austerity and, in their words, getting Britain ready for Brexit.
We should look at pulling a whole number of different levers. I think committing to further cuts in corporation tax would be good. I think doing more for the tax bills of individuals as well, particularly like the idea of raising the threshold before people pay national insurance contributions. That would lift a lot more people out of tax altogether.
But is the kind of fiscal loosening that Mr Johnson has been advocating something that would actually help the economy in a short-term downturn?
The sorts of policies he's talked about, hiring more police officers, extra money for schools, cuts to income tax or national insurance contributions, will all take some time to feed through and to affect the economy and affect people's spending. If what you want is a very short-term boost to the economic activity, what you need is policies that are going to make people feel richer and have more to spend quickly, or perhaps policies like a temporary VAT cut that give people an incentive to get out, go to the shops and spend their money now.
And monetary policy? Interest rate cuts? More money printing? That's up to the Independent Bank of England. But could we see Donald Trump-style pressure brought to bear on the central bank for stimulus?
It's always dangerous for politicians to put pressure on central banks. If anything, that might backfire because central banks rightly protect their independence. But I think it's pretty clear which way the Bank of England would respond. I think it'll be in a similar way to what happened in 2016. So rather than raising interest rates to defend the pound or to choke off inflationary pressures, they focused instead on the weakness in the real economy. They actually cut interest rates and announced additional quantitative easing.
Regardless of their views on how precarious the economy is at the moment, most analysts believe a no-deal Brexit rupture would likely tip the UK into a recession. So, in the end, perhaps the most important economic policy question is whether signs of economic turbulence over the coming months, a falling pound, sliding stock markets, job losses, could affect Boris Johnson's strategy of Brexit by the 31st of October at any costs.
Public opinion is clearly affected by weak economic performance, and therefore it's quite likely that it will feed through into the political debate and into the decisions that the government makes, but it's difficult to know exactly how it might impact on their decisions.
If anything, if the economic news does continue to deteriorate, then it may well be that he wants to be even stronger in terms of boosting the economy through fiscal policy. And I think the Bank of England would want to respond in the same way. I certainly don't think it's going to cause a rethink of Brexit policy, and clearly the political commitment to leave is so strong that it's going to happen come what may.
So, back off or double down?
Ben Chu there. Well, I'm joined now from Worcester by Mark Garnier, former Trade Minister, who's now running to be chair of the Treasury Select Committee. Thank you for joining us this evening. Think twice or double down is what our economics editor was saying there. Do you think that realising that the economy is shrinking is going to make anyone in government think twice about the risks of a no-deal Brexit and maybe change their minds?
Well, I would certainly hope they would do. I mean, there's no doubt about it. If you're going to change the relationship or the economic relationship you've had with your biggest trading partner built up over 4 decades, if you have a hard Brexit, it's going to be very, very difficult for business. But I think one of the interesting things that have been discussed in your piece is the fact that consumer demand is really, really important to all of this. The problem is if we have a hard Brexit, we run the risk of further devaluation of sterling. We also run the risk of tariffs on many imported goods. And if we then subsequently see a fall in the housing market, we could also see an increase in the savings ratio. So there are a number of different reasons why the government will have to do a lot of different things in order to try to stimulate consumer demand when you've got so many difficult things going on.
When you say hard Brexit, do you mean leaving the European Union without any kind of deal, without an implementation period and without a trade agreement in place?
Exactly, the so-called 1 in a million chance of leaving with a hard Brexit.
Well, exactly. That's what the Prime Minister says. So he's telling his civil servants to ramp up preparations for a no-deal exit from the EU, whilst he's simultaneously telling us that that's not what he thinks will happen, that it is 1,000,000 to 1 chance. What game is he playing here? Who is he bluffing? Is he trying to persuade the EU that he's serious here, or does he actually want to take the country out with no deal?
Well, look, I hope this is a very serious bit of brinkmanship and that he will be successful in terms of getting a deal over the line before we leave on the 31st of October. The reality of it is that I think a lot of the preparations that are being done by the government are more logistical type of preparations. So this is making sure that the ports are free at Dover, that things move slickly, that we get our drugs and medicine into the country as we need them. The problem is that every company that does business with mainland Europe has a certain arrangement which has been built up over a long period of time. And I've been meeting businesses in my constituency and the wider country that have been saying ultimately that the idea of no Brexit, a no-deal Brexit, is actually far more frightening than the uncertainty of not having Brexit at the end of October. So basically we're finding that people would rather have a deal than have no deal.
Yes, I mean, you've said before that no deal is bloody dangerous. We can't afford to risk sacrificing people's jobs, savings and living standards, you said just a few months ago. If that's what you believe, what are you prepared to do when Parliament comes back in September to try and prevent a no-deal exit from the EU?
Well, this, of course, is a million-dollar question. It's the extent to which Parliament is going to fight back against the government that is potentially trying to push forward for a no-deal Brexit, if that is indeed what they are trying to do. I mean, the other problem that many of us have to think about is if we push back hard enough, do we destabilise the government to the extent where we could potentially lose a general election? And many of us are more fearful of a Corbyn-led sort of quasi-Marxist government than we would necessarily be of a no-deal Brexit.
Seriously,
but these are incredibly
so
difficult times.
A no-deal Brexit,
what type
which
of pain
you think
do you want?
would destroy people's jobs and living standards, is more dangerous than the Conservative Party losing a general election. It sounds as though you're putting party before country there.
No, because if the Conservative Party loses to a Jeremy Corbyn-led government, where you're going to have expropriation of pension fund assets, in terms of the nationalisation of utilities, for example, various other policies in terms of hiking business taxes, all of that kind of stuff could actually be just as damaging in its own peculiar way. And actually, if you add a hard left government to a hard Brexit, you find yourself in a very, very, very difficult position because you don't have that sort of absorbent factor of the European Union that could sort of slightly lessen the impact of hard left policies.
So there has been talk, as you'll know, this week of the idea of a government of national unity rather than a general election and the possibility of a Labour government winning that. Would you support that? Would you vote against your own Prime Minister in a vote of no confidence if you thought it was to usher in something that wasn't a Labour government led by Jeremy Corbyn but that would stop no deal?
I'd need to have a close look at it at the time. But we are getting to the stage where many Conservative MPs are considering voting against their own government in order to make sure that we don't have a hard Brexit. I haven't got there yet, but I do know some of my colleagues are there. But of course, bear in mind that a government of national unity would be a single issue government that could only last as long as getting a deal would be in place. And then, of course, you would have to go back to a general election. And then, of course, you then have the uncertainty again as to who would win that general election.
Mark Garnier, thank you very much for talking to us this evening.